Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. On this channel, we routinely criticize the Jedi and their role in the Clone Wars. Not only did the Jedi willingly agree to lead an army of clones who were essentially slaves, they were also completely unprepared for the tactical, strategic, and logistical elements of warfare. But the one thing they were really good at doing was fighting in one-on-one situations. Today, I want to take a look at some Force techniques that really help a Jedi survive on a larger and more chaotic battlefield. Precognition is what really separates the Jedi from the rest of us. With this ability, Force users are able to perceive any incoming danger and prepare accordingly. This is why they are able to defeat blaster bolts so deftly and consistently. Of course, this precognition ability needs to be trained along with hand-eye coordination. At the most minimal level, precognition will tell you that a stray blaster is about to hit your face and give you enough time to react. Those with stronger precognition can even see glimpses of the future, which could potentially help them to avoid large traps or even death. In the years leading up to Order 66, many Jedi had terrible nightmares and visions. But no one really acted on them because, generally speaking, the Jedi frowned upon people looking at their visions as truth. The fear is that fear of the future itself can lead to the dark side. In my opinion, precognition is a very important skill that will allow you to better understand what the hell is going around you during a very chaotic battle. Practice this ability and you might just be able to see some very nasty surprises before they even appear. And at its least, it will warn you about that mortar round that's about to drop right next to you. Sometimes even precognition isn't enough. Sometimes your spidey senses will kick in, but you'll notice that the weapon being pointed at you is a sonic cannon. These larger weapon emplacements have a wide area effect and are really hard to avoid. Even if you do manage to keep your lightsaber in front of you, it's not going to do much against a sonic wave. Same thing goes for turbo lasers or any really heavy weapon. In this case, I recommend you use something called Force Dash or Force Speed. It's a simple trick, but it does enhance your speed to a ridiculous level. Done properly, people won't even see you because you're moving way too fast. Force Dash is also a terrific way to get out of any kind of ambush you might have fallen into. On larger battlefields where you have big open spaces and no cover, Force Dash is a very useful tool to keep you ahead of enemy turbo lasers as you advance on enemy positions. Now, I highly recommend any Force user who joins the military learn the third form of lightsaber combat. This is a defensive shell technique that is very useful against multiple opponents or blaster rounds. But there also is another school of Force power known as TUTAMINIS, and it allows an individual to actually absorb energy. Extremely proficient users of TUTAMINIS can stop a lightsaber with their bare hands. Some Jedi Masters like Yoda could even absorb Sith lightning and shoot it back out and not be harmed by its dark side energy. The whole idea behind the TUTAMINIS school of Force powers is creating an energy field that can drain thermal or electric energy from a projectile. It is a very tiring process that requires a massive amount of Force power and concentration, especially when one is absorbing energy. One of the more efficient methods of TUTAMINIS would be just to redirect and deflect blaster bolts instead of catching them. Less impressive, but easier to sustain over a long period. Force telekinesis is also a very useful skill for the open battlefield. It's also one of the first things that a young Force user will learn inadvertently by themselves. Telekinesis simply allows Force users to manipulate physical matters with the Force. While this might sound simple, it can be used creatively to perform a wide range of tasks. Powerful Force users could use a 360 Force push and create space all around them. For a Jedi, Force Disarm allows you to peacefully take away an opponent's weapon, whereas Force Blast or Force Wave can take out an entire group of people in your way. Force Choke is a famous dark side ability combined with Force Lift. It's an extremely terrifying and demoralizing thing to see people lifted in the air, unable to breathe. More powerful dark side Force users could probably strangle multiple people at the same time. Telekinesis is also a great tool for defensive purposes. You can lift a large object to shield yourself or fling it at an enemy to disable their weapon. Your options are basically limitless. You're only held back by your creativity and maybe ethics, which is why the Sith have a lot more fun with this technique. There are so many things inside of a person's body you can mess with using telekinesis. At a quick glance, the Force Stasis move seems like an extension of the telekinesis school of Force powers. It allows the user to literally suspend objects while they are moving or severely limit their speed. But unlike telekinesis, which requires the individual to constantly be controlling the pressure around an object, Force stasis is instant and does not need to be sustained with continuous telekinesis power. It's almost like a switch you turn on and leave on, and your poor enemy is just stuck. I'm theorizing here, but maybe what the Force is doing in this situation is it's literally ripping a hole in the time fabric of the universe. Maybe the Force users are condensing material at a molecular level and creating a super dense gravitational time dilation. I know this all sounds like space magic, but that's exactly what Star Wars is good at, so let's just go with that. Some users of Force stasis were even able to stop blaster bolts in midair, which is a very useful skill on a large battlefield, and a great last resort defense if all fails. Now, with this next skill, you're probably not going to want to be on the battlefield, but just adjacent to it, because if people realize you're doing what you're doing, they're probably going to gun after you and try to take you out, and you will be very preoccupied while using this technique. Of course, I'm talking about battlefield meditation, a Force ability that literally allows you to buff your allies and debuff your enemies. During the Old Republic era, this was an extremely potent tool to use on the battlefield, especially because there were so many Force sensitives usually involved in these battles. People who were proficient in battlefield meditation usually were really good at the control school of Force powers. Generally speaking, if you were able to Force mind trick someone with a lot of proficiency at a young age, most likely you had a natural affinity for doing literally the same thing to massive amounts of people. For a light side Force user, battlefield meditation usually involved erasing any fear your soldiers had and increasing their morale and confidence. It really depended, of course, on how powerful the individual was who was doing the battlefield meditation. Light side Force users also were able to attack the enemy by demoralizing them and making them believe that there was no way they could win a battle. Some Jedi Masters with very good strategic knowledge also could coordinate the movements of your entire fleet or army in the same way that a hive mind would almost do it, but not as, I guess, invasive. The Sith had a more perverted method of battlefield meditation, primarily because they literally took free will from their army and made it into a hive mind all the way. This means large amounts of soldiers could be sent to their deaths and sacrificed like mindless drones. It could be extremely demoralizing for your enemy to witness such selfish acts of terrifying obedience. Of course, there are some ethical concerns with this, which is why the Jedi rarely ever did this. The problem with battlefield meditation is if someone manages to kill the individual doing it, everyone who's connected to the battlefield meditation sphere will momentarily be dazed and confused. Many battles have been won because of this type of event. Following the death of Emperor Palpatine at Endor, the Imperial fleet was thrown into chaos, allowing the much smaller Rebel fleet to rout them. I assume that this Force power essentially manipulates the chemical reactions in our brain, but with such control and accuracy that they can literally implant messages, thoughts, and ideas into our minds, which is why Force users are extremely dangerous, and we probably should lock them all up in some kind of special, Force prison. When Jedi Master Luke Skywalker isolated himself on the planet of Ahch-To with a cache of sacred Jedi texts, one of the techniques he learned was the Falanasi Force technique known as SIMILFUTURUS, or Force projection. It's just one of many extremely powerful Force techniques that were lost due to the constant fighting between the Jedi and Sith. Now, in the Star Wars galaxy, there are two versions of the Force, the Living Force and the Cosmic Force. The Living Force is what the Jedi manipulate to have all their powers. It's basically in every living thing in the universe. The Cosmic Force is more like this background infrastructure which kind of holds all of the galaxy together, if that makes any sense. At the same time, the Cosmic Force is kind of like another dimension where the Living Force will return to once its host is dead. Now, a Jedi has the ability to become one with the Force. This means being so in tune with the Force that when they die, the Living Force will literally preserve their consciousness and bring them into the Cosmic Force. Force projections actually work in a similar way, but it usually kept the user alive. By funneling their Living Force presence into the Cosmic Force, it allows the user to project their consciousness to incredible distances. Not only were they able to see what was going on the other side of the galaxy with no technology, a very powerful Force user could also project an image of themselves as well, which looks real until someone touches you. This power required a massive amount of energy and could even kill the user if they weren't prepared for it. So there you have it, guys. Those are some Force techniques that I feel like are important to learn if you are going to be on a large battlefield. I mean, the Jedi are really good at controlling situations. I mean, they make the perfect peace officers in many ways because of that. But when you involve a lot of different moving parts, ships with gigantic lasers, I mean, you're going to need as many skills as possible to help you survive, even if you are a Jedi. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.